everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Liana. Today I'm going to be holding another discussion here on my channel, and hopefully this video won't take too long, not because I don't want to take up too much of your time, although that is part of it, but because I had injections today and I'm feeling fatigued, and then I have to go out tomorrow and get another rather large injection, so I would like to limit my time here with you. But today we are going to be talking about discomfort. And obviously discomfort can show up in a lot of different ways and forms. Some of them are good to try and avoid in life, but I have a feeling that lately we've been conflating all of these different forms of discomfort so that we feel that they're all the same and we try to avoid all of them. And that's kind of part of the problem that we're experiencing as a society together right now. So I want to start by showing you these slides that I came across on Instagram. It's from an account called Decolonize Unconference. Whiteness is misreading questions and critique as an attack or being against you. Whiteness is confusing discomfort for pain and harm. Whiteness is avoiding discomfort despite it being necessary for change and growth. So I want to ask, how do these statements make you feel? Do you agree or disagree with them? Do they provoke feelings of discomfort? Does this manifest through denial or anger or defensiveness? And if so, why? Okay, I just had a glaring technical issue. I am back. This is the type of discomfort I would like to talk about today. When we've been taught that all discomfort is bad, and we tend to go through life trying to avoid it as best we possibly can. And then we never process discomfort when it comes up for us. This has been most commonly reflected in how individuals with privilege speak with those who are more marginalized. Maybe you've heard some of these following phrases or even spoken some of them yourself. If you made your point in a nicer way, maybe I would consider listening. You are pushing people away. None of what you said matches what I learned growing up. Therefore, I'm not going to listen to you. Talking about racism or any form of bigotry is negative and divisive. If you stop talking about racism or other forms of bigotry, they will disappear. It's people like you who are keeping these forms of bigotry alive. Here's the thing. For many of us as children and teens, we were taught many of the same things in school. As schools function now and how they have functioned for a really long time now, hopefully starting to change a little bit moving forward, information is very carefully cherry-picked to be handed down to younger minds. For example, maybe you learned that Abraham Lincoln freed enslaved peoples, but did you also learn that he never would have done so if it would have reunited the states sooner? And did you know that those who owned enslaved peoples were given reparations for their loss of property via the Emancipation Compensation Act? Yet enslaved peoples and their descendants still have yet to receive any form of reparations. There's this sort of weird idea floating around out there right now that people who are anti-capitalist and anti-racist are being indoctrinated in our schools. But this isn't the case because schools actually help to teach and perpetuate racism and capitalism. When I was in school, we learned about our history of prime ministers, but we didn't learn how those prime ministers perpetuated oppression against indigenous peoples and other marginalized groups of people. We learned about our railways, but not who built them and how they were built. It was slave labor. We learned about how Canada became a place of refuge for enslaved peoples, but not how we also enslaved them. We learned about the Pilgrims, but not much about First Nations peoples or how they were treated, such as through residential schooling. We never read any literature in English class that was by any person of color, anyone other than a white person, typically a white man. And I can still recall many of the books I read in high school having the N-word written throughout the pages. We were taught how our value as students was inherently tied to how hard we worked. Students who showed up all the time and had great attendance were rewarded. Those who failed to meet that attendance record were punished, even if they were acutely or chronically ill. So if most of us grow up learning these same single, carefully crafted narratives, what's really happening here? We are being given the comfortable stuff, the comfortable information, the stuff that maintains the status quo. And we don't question it because of who's giving it to us and who else knows this information, such as our families. When we grow up our whole lives not questioning these single narratives we've been fed, when it comes time to be presented with different information, conflicting information, something which goes against what we think we know, well, many of us take it as a personal attack. We feel immediately offended and defensive, even though it's nothing about our character as people. We have trouble admitting that we are wrong and we have bought into a lie, even when it's not our fault. It's the result of how education institutions currently function and how hard the rest of society works to hold that lie together. Our parents, in the news, in museums. It becomes our fault, though, when we are presented with new, different information and we refuse to look further into it, no matter how much it might contrast with what we are told. When we are incapable of doing our own research, instead, again, accepting what is most comfortable. I'm really just not meant to film this video because I had yet another technical error. Okay. Perhaps the worst thing that happens is when we refuse to push past this initial discomfort and defensiveness, and it can manifest in several different ways, such as denial, anger, and even in some cases, violence. If this cycle of discomfort sounds a little familiar to you, it should, and if it doesn't, it should. Because historically, this is always how human rights progress has been denied. For example, in the book White Rage by Carol Anderson, you will find this passage. Not surprisingly, polls showed that as African Americans achieved greater access to their citizenship rights, white discomfort and unease mounted. By 1966, 85% of whites were certain that the pace of civil rights progress was far too fast. It was also around this time that the term reverse racism came into play. It was coined off the back of affirmative action legislation, as white supremacists felt such a sense of threat and discomfort at the fact that Black people and people of color could ever achieve equality in their society. In case you couldn't already tell, this idea never actually went away. The myth of white genocide, it's just that, it's a myth, it's not real, has become pervasive throughout many countries, including in societies in North America, as white people feel discomfort and threatened by the idea that people of color are continuing to earn various levels of rights and may one day, indeed, hopefully, they should get equal rights to us. Whenever any minoritized or marginalized group has tried to further their rights, there has been and there still is pushback because of the idea that those who currently hold power will end up with less. It isn't pie. Incidentally, I left the book White Rage under one of my past videos as a resource, and one person had this to say. One of your resources is a book called White Rage. Yeah, I'm out. That's what I'm talking about, people. Discomfort. If the book had simply been called Rage, I'm sure this person wouldn't have said anything. But that it was called White Rage made them immediately so uncomfortable that they immediately discredited anything I had to say or Carol Anderson had to say or anyone else that I listed as a reference. And look, I myself have had to continuously unlearn so many things throughout my life and still am. And it's been hard. I've come up against personal discomfort because it challenges something that I thought I knew. Belief systems, ideas, thoughts. We are always inundated by ideas from every corner of society from the time that we're small. That's why racial bias is in us by the time that we turn 3 years old. And it's okay to come up against this discomfort. It's natural that we will feel it at some point in time. But we will never learn and never grow as a people and a society if we only accept ideas that perfectly align with those that we already have. That's not listening, and it sure as hell doesn't challenge us or the harmful systems we currently have in our society. It's called complacency, and it's what far too many of us are already focused on. We are complacent, and it shows. It's how we've learned to avoid empathy and instead turn to apathy. It's how we learn to ignore things that don't directly affect us. It's how we accept that, well, things are always going to be this way and they're never going to change. I'm sure you've had somebody tell you that before, or maybe you've even thought it yourself. And you or that person is right. Things are not going to change if we keep acting like that. We need to actively move through discomfort for there to be meaningful and long-lasting change. We need to challenge ourselves, and we need to challenge these harmful systems in our society, because as our society works now, it's harming everybody, all of us. And none of us can be free until we're all free. So that's the truth. How did it make you feel? If you'd like to watch more of my videos, there's a button below where you can subscribe and stick around. I'd love it if you did, but if you don't want to, that's totally fine. And I hope you and your loved ones are doing well and staying safe. I hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone.